This story is about to shatter everything you thought you knew. Hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single detail of our weekly deep dives. Ring that bell. This is the beginning of the end. He screamed it at her. "I've outgrown you. I'm a vice president, and you are absolutely nothing." With those vicious words, he ordered the woman who had been his wife for 5 years to pack her bags and vacate their luxurious Manhattan condo. What he failed to realize, as he tossed a few $100s on the counter for a hotel, was that he wasn't just kicking out his seemingly mediocre spouse. He was dismissing the secret, undercover billionaire owner of the entire multinational corporation for which he worked. He thought he was closing a chapter. In reality, he was signing his own death warrant. This is the staggering account of his epic fall. The rocket and the anchor. Marcus Sterling believed the world was divided into 2 types of people: rockets and anchors. He was, by his own estimation, a rocket. At 34, he was already a senior director at Ascension Dynamics, one of the most aggressive tech logistics firms in New York City. He worked out of the gleaming glass and steel monolith known as the Ascension Tower, a structure that pierced the Manhattan skyline like a diamond-cut spear. Marcus was handsome, sharp, and utterly ruthless. He wore $3,000 Tom Ford suits, had a standing reservation at the city's most exclusive restaurants, and navigated the corporate world with the predatory grace of a shark. His wife, Elena Navarro, was the anchor. At least that's how he saw her. Elena had kept her maiden name, a detail he had initially found endearingly independent, but now found vaguely annoying. To Marcus, she was aggressively ordinary. She was pretty in a quiet, forgettable way. She was smart, he supposed, but lacked all ambition. He had met her 5 years prior when she was a university librarian. He had loved her calmness. Now, that calmness felt like stagnation, the ultimate proof of her mediocrity. She too worked at Ascension Dynamics, but while he operated on the 70th floor, she was a mid-level data analyst down on the 25th. They commuted separately, rarely spoke of work, and moved in entirely different orbits. He was a rocket, ascending. She was processing invoices. "Elena, are you listening to me?" The view from their living room was a breathtaking panorama of Central Park, a vista he felt he had earned. Elena looked up from her laptop, curled on the sofa in a simple gray sweatsuit. "I'm sorry, Marcus, I'm just finishing up a reconciliation report," he scoffed. "Thrilling. I just spent 3 hours in a strategy session with Carla Perez. We're restructuring the entire North American logistics arm, and you're reconciling." Elena closed her laptop, her expression placid. "Someone has to make sure the numbers add up, Marcus. Otherwise, your grand strategies are just expensive fiction. Spare me the philosophy, honey. I'm telling you, this new acquisition by Global Ventures is shaking things up. The new ownership is cleaning house. They don't care about reconciliation. They care about vision." Global Ventures was the mysterious private equity firm that had bought Ascension Dynamics 6 months earlier. They were ghosts. No one had ever met the new owner, rumored to be a reclusive, old money heir, referred to in memos only as the chair. "Carla thinks I'm the front runner for the new vice president role," Marcus announced, pouring himself a glass of Macallan 25. "She's basically running the transition, and she sees my potential." Carla Perez. The name hung in the air. Carla was his direct superior, the executive vice president. She was everything Elena was not: loud, surgically astute, and covered in Cartier. Marcus and Carla had been having an affair for 8 months. It was, he justified, a merger of talent. "That's great, Marcus," Elena said, her voice quiet. "You've worked hard." "Damn right I have," he said, "and I'm not going to let anyone or anything hold me back. He looked at her, curled on the sofa. A cold sense of resolve settled in his stomach. She was an anchor, and it was time to cut the cord. He was thinking of his future. He was thinking of Carla, the VP title, the massive bonus he and Carla planned to unlock from their star project, Project Odyssey. He was not thinking about the laptop Elena had just closed. It wasn't a reconciliation report. It was an encrypted, real-time audit of the entire company's finances, piped directly to a private server in Switzerland. And the name on the account she was flagging for irregular expenses, the Project Odyssey account, was his own. "I'm going to shower," he said, already mentally rehearsing his breakup speech. "All right, Marcus," Elena replied, opening her laptop again. "Have a good night." He walked away, missing the glacial flicker in her eyes. He was a rocket, all right. But rockets, when they fail, don't just drift, they crash and burn. What would you do if you discovered your partner, whom you thought you knew everything about, was actually hiding a secret this big? Leave your comment below. The promotion and the cruel decision. The promotion arrived on a Tuesday. Marcus was summoned to the 70th floor, not to his usual office, but to the executive conference room. Carla Perez was waiting, flanked by two stone-faced men from HR. "Marcus," Carla said, her smile as bright and hard as a diamond. "On behalf of Ascension Dynamics and our new partners, Global Ventures, I'm pleased to officially offer you the position of Vice President of Global Strategy." Marcus felt a surge of pure adrenaline. This was it, the final rung before the C-suite. "Carla, I'm honored," he said, projecting a mask of humble gratitude. "You'll oversee the complete rollout of Project Odyssey," she continued, handing him a new access badge. "This comes with a significant salary bump, a new corner office on the 72nd floor, and a bonus package we'll negotiate." The look she gave him was electric. As soon as the HR reps left, Carla rounded the desk and wrapped her arms around his neck. "We did it, baby," she whispered, her voice husky. "We're the new power couple of this entire tower." "Just the tower?" Marcus murmured, pulling her closer. "I was thinking the whole city, one step at a time." She laughed. "Now there is one final matter." "What is it?" "Your wife." Carla's face hardened. "I can't have my new vice president, my partner, going home to a low-level analyst. It's unseemly. It looks weak. The board values decisiveness, Marcus. Global Ventures values strength. If we're going to celebrate this, I want to know you've cleared the deck. Cut the anchor, Marcus. Tonight." Marcus nodded, his heart hammering with a mixture of thrill and cold finality. Consider it done. That afternoon, he didn't go straight home. He and Carla went to the Modern, drinking champagne that cost more than Elena's monthly salary. They mapped out their plans, not just for Project Odyssey, but for their real project, using the project's intentionally inflated, massive budget to siphon millions. They would create shell companies, file falsified invoices, and divert a percentage of the capital to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. It was Carla's idea, but Marcus had perfected the methodology. It was foolproof. When he arrived back at the condo, it was nearly 11. He was high on victory and champagne. Elena was in the kitchen, packing a simple lunch for the next day. The sheer domesticity of the act filled him with a sudden, sharp revulsion. "We need to talk," he said, tossing his keys onto the marble counter. Elena looked up, her expression unreadable. "All right, you got the promotion, Marcus. The memo went out this afternoon. Congratulations." Her lack of enthusiasm was, for him, the final insult. "That's it? Congratulations. This is the biggest moment of my career, and you're acting like I just found a $20 bill. "I'm just surprised," she said, snapping the lid on the container. "With the new oversight from Global Ventures, I assumed they would be conducting more thorough reviews." What is that supposed to mean? He snapped. It means, Elena said, finally turning to face him, that Project Odyssey's budget is inflated by almost 40%. The projections are based on faulty market data. It's a house of cards, Marcus. He was stunned. Not just that she knew about the project, but that she had the audacity to criticize it. You're a data processor, Elena, he spat, his voice heavy with contempt. You sit on the 25th floor and review spreadsheets. I'm on the 72nd floor designing the future. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know the numbers, she said simply, and these numbers are a lie. That was it. The last straw. You know what? You're right, he said, walking to the hall closet and pulling out her old canvas duffel bag. He threw it on the floor between them. I've been blind, but now I see. I am a rocket, Elena, and you are a lead-lined, concrete-filled anchor, and I am cutting the rope. Tonight. Elena looked at the bag. What are you doing? I'm ending this. I want a divorce. He pulled out his wallet, took all the cash he had, about $800, and threw it on the counter. This is a luxury building. I can't have you squatting here. I want you gone, tonight. You're kicking me out, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. I'm liberating myself, he corrected. I've outgrown you. I've outgrown this farce of a marriage. I'm moving on to bigger and better things. I'm with Carla Perez now. We're partners, real partners. She understands me. She's on my level. He expected tears. He expected pleading. He expected something. Elena only looked at him, with a deep, unreadable sadness in her eyes. It wasn't the sadness of a victim. It was the sadness of a judge about to pass sentence. Carla Perez, she repeated, as if tasting the name. The woman who's been signing off on your fraudulent expense reports for 6 months, I see. Marcus froze. What did you say? Pack your bags, Elena, he snarled, his voice dropping to a low growl. I want you out of my apartment in 1 hour. Elena nodded slowly. Your apartment? She looked around the multi-million-dollar condo, at the floor-to-ceiling windows, at the artwork on the walls. Yes, I suppose you're right. She picked up the duffel and walked into their bedroom. Marcus, feeling the first tremor of unease, poured another drink. He had done it. He was free. An hour later, Elena emerged. She had packed one small bag. She wore a simple black coat. She looked like what she was, a dismissed employee, a discarded wife. She walked toward the door. Elena, wait, he said, feeling a sudden unwelcome pang of, what? Guilt? No, pity. Don't make this ugly. My lawyer will send you a standard settlement package. Just sign the papers and we can all move on. Elena stopped, her hand on the doorknob. You're right, Marcus. This won't be ugly. She turned to face him one last time. Her face was a mask of cold porcelain. It will be thorough. She opened the door and walked out, closing it softly behind her. Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. It was done. He emptied his glass, triumphant. He sent a text to Carla. The anchor is cut. Do you think Marcus will live to regret this decision? Or will his arrogance lead him to an even deeper abyss? I want to read your theories in the comments. The Queen unveiled Elena. Navarro walked out the service entrance of the building. She didn't want to see Antonio, the doorman, the one who always greeted her as Mrs. Sterling, the one she always tipped generously at Christmas. The November air was chilling, biting at her face. She stood on the curb of East 57th Street, just another woman in a dark coat, holding a single suitcase. Marcus had been right. She looked small. An elegant black Maybach S6 at 80, so dark it looked like a chunk of the night sky, glided silently to the curb. A man in a dark suit, Arthur, her head of security, stepped out and opened the back door. He didn't ask any questions. "Good evening, Miss Ventura," he said, taking her bag. "Arthur," she replied, her voice regaining a steel it hadn't carried in 5 years. She slid onto the cream-colored leather. The car smelled of polished wood and silent power. The name on her analyst paycheck, her driver's license, and her marriage certificate read Elena Navarro. That was her mother's maiden name. It was the name she had chosen when, following her father's death, she decided to infiltrate the $80 billion empire he had left her. She had wanted to understand the behemoth, Global Ventures, from the ground up. She had wanted to find the rot, and she had succeeded. She had also fallen in love. Foolishly. She had met Marcus at a university gala she attended as a mid-level benefactor. He had been dynamic, charming, and seemed so refreshingly ambitious. He hadn't known who she was. He saw Elena Navarro, the librarian. She had loved that. She had loved him. She had built a life with him, maintaining her cover. She had bought their condo through a shell corporation, one of hundreds she controlled, and leased it back at a rate Marcus could afford. His huge salary, which he was so proud of, was a drop in the ocean of her personal wealth. She had joined Ascension Dynamics, one of her own companies, to be near him and to oversee the transition after her holding company acquired it. She had wanted to be a wife, not a chairwoman, which is why they had called her an anchor. Elena picked up the encrypted satellite phone from the armrest. She dialed a number. It rang once. "David, it's Elena." The voice on the other end was warm, but instantly alert. David Hayes, the CEO of Global Ventures and her late father's most trusted advisor. "Elena, are you all right? Where are you?" "I'm in the Maybach. I'm out." She choked the word out. "He kicked me out, David. He's with Carla Perez." There was a heavy silence. David had warned her about Marcus. He had seen the man's ruthless ambition. "That absolute idiot," David said, his voice hardening. "What are your orders?" The use of Miss Ventura jolted her back to reality. The heartbroken wife, Elena Navarro, receded. The chairwoman, Elena Ventura, took her place. "He thinks I'm a low-level analyst he just left homeless. He thinks he and Carla are about to get rich off Project Odyssey. He has no idea you've been flagging his invoices, does he?" David asked. "Not a clue. He just called me an anchor and said I didn't understand his vision. So, it's time we gave him a lesson in strategic oversight. Activate Protocol Ventura. I want an immediate total freeze on all assets associated with Project Odyssey, effective 9 a.m. tomorrow. I want his new office, the one on the 72nd floor, keycard locked. Change the security protocols. Done," David said. "And David, the offshore accounts, the ones in the Caymans that he and Carla have been feeding for months. I don't just want them frozen, I want them seized. I've had the passwords for weeks. Drain them to the last penny. Transfer everything to the Ventura Foundation Relief Fund by tomorrow morning." David let out a low whistle. "That's several $1 million, Elena. It's a bold move before the audit is public." "He called it a bonus package," Elena said, her voice turning icy. "Consider it a donation. And one more thing. The condo on East 57th. I want the locks changed before 8 a.m. Have Arthur's team take my personal effects tonight and put the rest of his and Carla's belongings in a storage unit in Queens. The property is to be cleaned and listed for sale by noon. And Mr. Sterling, he's a vice president now. He's a rocket. Let's see how high he can fly without wings and without fuel. Do not let him know any of this is happening. Let him walk into that building tomorrow, thinking he's the king of the world." "And you, Elena?" David asked, his voice softening. The Maybach was now crossing the East River, heading toward the Ventura family's triplex penthouse in the Upper East Side, a home Marcus never knew existed. "I'm going to take a bath," Elena said. "Then I'm going to get some sleep. And tomorrow morning, You and I are going to preside over an emergency board meeting. It's time for the chairwoman to finally come into the office." She hung up. She leaned her head against the cold glass and watched the city lights blur past. The tears finally came, not of sadness, but of a cold, clarifying rage. What do you think of this unexpected twist? Do you think Marcus stands a chance against Elena Ventura? Tell us what you think will happen in the comments. The Rocket's reckoning, Marcus Sterling woke up in his own bed, alone, and felt magnificent. He stretched, the Egyptian cotton sheets cool against his skin. The silence in the condo was golden. No Elena puttering in the kitchen, no quiet, judging presence. Just him, his ambition, and the stunning view of the park. He texted Carla. "Good morning, partner. See you on the 72nd floor." He took extra time getting ready, choosing a crisp new Brioni suit. He put on the Patek Philippe watch Carla had given him, the one he'd told Elena was a client gift. He felt like a king. He grabbed his briefcase and his access card, his shiny new VP-level badge, and walked out. The first crack in his perfect day appeared at the elevator. He swiped his new card for the executive lift. Access denied. He frowned. He swiped it again. Access denied. He sighed. Annoying. A glitch. He was forced to use the regular staff elevator, crowding in with analysts and administrators. He recognized a few faces from Elena's 25th floor department. They looked at him with an odd, nervous energy. He ignored them, stepping out on the 70th floor and walking toward the executive stairwell. He swiped his card at the door to the 72nd floor executive wing. Access denied. Now he was angry. He called Carla. "My new card isn't working," he snapped. "I'm locked out of the stairwell." "What?" Carla sounded distracted, her voice tight. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm in my office. Just meet me in the main boardroom. We have a problem." Marcus felt a twist of irritation. "A problem? We are the solution, darling. What is it?" "It's Project Odyssey," she whispered. "The funding it's been flagged, Marcus." "Flagged? By who? Compliance?" "Worse. It's a chair-level flag. All assets are frozen, all payments, all wire transfers, everything." "That's impossible," Marcus said, starting to walk quickly toward the boardroom. "We are the only ones with the authorization codes." "Apparently not. Marcus, the entire budget is locked down, and that's not all." Her voice cracked. "The Cayman account. It's gone." "What do you mean it's gone?" "I mean empty," she shrieked, and he could hear the panic in her voice. "Zero balance. Every dollar transferred out. I can't trace it. It's just gone." Marcus stopped walking. He was in the middle of the 70th floor atrium. People were beginning to stare. He lowered his voice to a furious whisper. "That's $5 million. How can it be gone? This has to be an internal rival. Someone knows. Someone is setting us up. We have to fix this, Marcus," Carla said, her bravado evaporating. "David Hayes just called an emergency board meeting for 10 a.m. in person. He said the chair is flying in." "The chair?" "She's finally showing her face." Marcus's mind raced. This was bad, but perhaps it was also an opportunity. "This," he said, regaining his confidence, "is our chance. We walk into that meeting. We present Project Odyssey. We show them the vision. We pin the funding issue on some low-level accounting error. We'll blame Elena's department. It's perfect. The sloppy work of a mid-level analyst. We'll say we found the discrepancy and locked the funds ourselves to protect the company. It'll make us look like heroes." Carla was silent for a moment. "You would throw your wife under the bus?" "I don't have a wife, remember?" Marcus said coldly. "I cut the anchor. Are you with me now? We're the Rockets, Carla. We're going to own this." "Okay," Carla breathed, calming down. "Okay, you're right. It's a data entry error. We found it. We're the heroes. Let's grab our presentation." He hung up and headed for her office, He swiped his old keycard. Access denied. He swiped the new one. Access denied. What the hell? He muttered. He knocked hard. Carla yanked the door open. Your card too, she asked. Both of them. Something is terribly wrong with security. Just let's grab the presentation and go. They snatched their laptops and headed for the main boardroom. The air in the executive wing was thick with tension. No one was talking. Everyone was waiting. Marcus felt a single cold bead of sweat run down his spine. He had attributed the keycard problems to a glitch. He had attributed the frozen funds to a rival. But as he stood outside the 80th floor boardroom, watching the most powerful people in the company file in with somber, silent faces, he realized this was not a glitch. And it was not a rival. It was an execution. The observatory, the 80th floor boardroom, was a legendary place. 3 of its walls were 30-foot-high glass panels that offered a god's-eye view of the city. The 4th wall was a seamless black digital screen. In the center sat a colossal, single-piece mahogany table, so polished it looked like a dark, still lake. Marcus and Carla took their usual seats midway down the table. They were vice presidents, but today they felt like interns. The entire executive board was present. David Hayes, the CEO of Global Ventures, sat at the head of the table. His face was granite. Thank you for meeting on such short notice, David began, his voice amplified by the room's hidden microphones. As you know, Global Ventures acquired Ascension Dynamics 6 months ago. Until now, we allowed the existing management structure to remain while we conducted a thorough review. He paused, letting the tension mount. That review, David continued, has found irregularities, significant, systemic, and in some cases criminal irregularities. We have discovered that certain star projects have been used as vehicles for embezzlement. We have found conflicts of interest, corporate waste, and a culture of arrogance that is unacceptable. David looked across the table, his eyes seeming to land on every person. These problems are so grave, David said, that the chairwoman of Global Ventures has decided to personally oversee the restructuring. She has been on the ground in this very building for 5 months, conducting a silent audit. Marcus's blood ran cold. On the ground? He'd never seen a chair. He'd never seen any new owner. She's been watching, David said, and she has seen everything. I will now turn the floor over to her. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the chairwoman of Global Ventures, Miss Elena Ventura. Marcus looked at the name on the digital screen. Ventura. He didn't make the connection. Not yet. He, like everyone else, turned toward the main door. The door swung open, and Elena walked in. This was not the Elena he had kicked out last night. This was not Elena Navarro, the anchor. This woman wore a custom-tailored navy pantsuit that probably cost more than his car. Her hair, which she used to wear in a simple bun, was down, styled in professional, elegant waves. Her face, free of the natural makeup she usually wore, was now defined, sharp, and absolutely cold. She was flanked by 2 bodyguards and a man Marcus recognized with a jolt of horror. Arthur Gonzalez, the head of the white-collar crimes division of the district attorney's office. David Hayes pulled out her chair. The room was so silent Marcus could hear the sound of his own heart pounding against his ribs. Carla made a small, choked noise, like a dying animal. Marcus's brain simply shut down. It refused to process the data. He was looking at his wife. He was looking at the woman he had thrown $800 at. He was looking at the nobody he had dismissed. And she was standing at the head of a table where he had just been fighting for his life. "Please sit down," Elena said. Her voice was different. The warmth was gone. It was crisp, clear, and brimming with absolute authority. She sat, and the rest of the board followed. Marcus and Carla remained standing, frozen like statues in a tragedy. "Mr. Sterling, Miss Perez, you look surprised," Elena said, her eyes fixed on them. "Please, sit down. This meeting is, after all, primarily about you." Marcus collapsed into his chair, his vision blurred. He couldn't breathe. Elena touched a control on the table. The massive wall screen lit up. "Let's talk about Project Odyssey," she said. Project Odyssey, Elena Ventura began, was, by Mr. Sterling's own proposal, a paradigm-shifting logistics solution, a way to optimize our European distribution using predictive AI. She looked directly at Marcus. "A brilliant vision, Marcus. Truly. I was impressed when I read the initial report." Marcus opened his mouth, but only a dry, clicking sound came out. "The problem," Elena continued, "is that the vision was fiction. The budget, however, was very real." A complex flowchart appeared on the enormous screen. It showed the $200 million budget for Project Odyssey, and branching from it like tumors were red lines. "Mr. Sterling and Miss Perez," Elena said, her voice cutting the silence, "created 3 shell corporations: Perez Logistics, Sterling Investments, and Odyssey Consulting. All 3, I'm sure you'll be surprised to learn, trace back to an omnibus account in the Cayman Islands." She clicked a button. Bank statements flashed on the screen. Account numbers. Routing numbers. For the past 6 months, Mr. Sterling and Miss Perez have approved $15.8 million in consulting fees and accelerated shipping retainers to these 3 companies. Companies that have no employees, no assets, and no function other than to receive stolen money. Carla finally found her voice. "That's not true. Those are legitimate partners. This is slander." "Is it?" Elena said, her voice dangerously soft. She clicked again. A new image filled the screen. It was a security photo from a bank in Grand Cayman. It showed Marcus and Carla in beachwear, signing documents at a banker's desk. The timestamp was 3 months prior, when they told the board they were at a logistics conference in Berlin. Carla Perez's face went from pale to a sickly mottled green. You, Marcus stammered. His mind finally caught up. "Elena, you were the analyst on the 25th floor, yes," Elena said. "I was. Elena Navarro. Navarro is my mother's maiden name. I joined Ascension to find the rot in my new company. I expected to find waste. I expected to find incompetence." She stood and walked slowly around the table, her heels clicking on the floor. "I did not expect to find it in my own home. I did not expect that the man I married, the man whose career I silently subsidized, whose apartment I purchased, whose genius was built on my family's legacy, would be the ringleader." She stopped directly behind Marcus, placing her hands on the back of his chair. He flinched as if she had struck him. "You called me an anchor, Marcus. You said I was holding you back while you were busy designing the future. But you weren't designing anything. You were just a common thief. A very, very stupid thief." "Elena, please," he whispered, the humiliation so profound it was physical. "We can fix this. It was a mistake. It was her." He pointed a shaking finger at Carla. "She made me do it. She—" "Silence," David Hayes roared, slamming his hand on the table. "You will address the chairwoman as Miss Ventura." Elena raised a hand. "It's all right, David. The desperation is appropriate." She walked back to the head of the table. "Miss Perez, your services are obviously terminated. Your shares are forfeited. Your pension is gone. Under your contract, we are invoking the moral turpitude clause. You will leave this building with nothing. Security will escort her." 2 uniformed guards stepped forward and grabbed Carla by the arms. "You can't do this!" Carla shrieked, her mask of composure shattered. "Marcus, tell them! Tell them!" Marcus only stared at the table, his world reduced to the polished grain of the mahogany. "As for you, Marcus," Elena said. Marcus looked up, his eyes pleading. This was his wife. Underneath all this, she was his wife. She had loved him. "Elena, honey, I am so sorry. I didn't know. I was an idiot. We can go to therapy. We can." Elena looked at him, and for the first time he saw no anger, no sadness. He saw nothing, only emptiness. "Mr. Sterling," she said, "you appear to be under the impression this is a marital dispute." She nodded to the man from the DA's office. "Mr. Gonzalez, he's all yours." Mr. Gonzalez and two plainclothes detectives stepped forward. "Marcus Sterling," Gonzalez said, his voice ringing out. "You are under arrest for grand larceny, wire fraud, and embezzlement." One of the detectives wrenched Marcus's arms behind his back and snapped on the handcuffs. The cold, metallic click echoed in the vast, silent room. You bitch! You set yourself up, Marcus," Elena said, turning her back to him as the detectives dragged him away. "You simply kicked the wrong person out of the house." She looked at the remaining board members, who were still in shock. "Now," she said, her voice turning completely professional, "let's talk about the future of this company." The final message. The fall was not a slow descent. It was a sudden, violent impact. Marcus Sterling, Vice President of Global Strategy, was no longer a name. He was a case number. He spent the first 8 hours in a central holding cell. The Brioni suit, his armor of success, felt like a carnival costume. It was wrinkled, and he was sure it smelled of the sour stench of the concrete cell, a mixture of old sweat, bleach, and human desperation. Denial was his only shield. This was a mistake, a misunderstanding, a corporate power play. Elena was angry. She was venting. Once she calmed down, once he could talk to her, he could fix this. He needed to call his lawyer, the shark from a prestigious firm who handled his, now ridiculously small, stock options. When he finally made his one phone call, the number for his high-powered attorney went straight to an icy voice assistant that informed him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling, but our firm will not be representing you in this matter. There appears to be a severe conflict of interest." "What conflict?" he screamed into the receiver. "Tell them who I am!" "We know who you are, sir," the voice replied, dripping with contempt. "We represent the Ventura Global Ventures Holding Company. Have a nice day. Click." She had already isolated him. Elena, his quiet, simple, ordinary wife, had a legal firewall that could repel an army. Panic, cold and greasy, began to seep through his denial. He was forced to call his parents in a small town in Florida. He had to call collect. His mother's sobs, his father's stunned, furious silence. It was a new kind of humiliation. "They say the bail is $5 million, Marcus," his father had shouted. $5 million? What the hell did you do? It's a mistake, Dad. They said you're a flight risk. They said you have offshore accounts. We're going to have to mortgage the house, Mark. The house you grew up in. We'll be there in the morning." The shame burned hotter than his rage. He had built an empire, he had told them. He was a rocket. Now he was just a son who had destroyed his parents' retirement. When he was released 36 hours later, on bail paid by his father's pension fund, the world he knew had vanished. His face was on the front page of the New York Post. "Tower of Greed," the headline screamed, with a split photo of his smug corporate headshot next to his new, haggard mugshot. Worse, the perp walk had been a masterpiece of psychological torture orchestrated by Elena. Security had routed him not through the back exit, but through the main marble atrium of the Ascension Tower. It was 12:30 p.m., The peak lunch rush. He was paraded in handcuffs past hundreds of his former colleagues. He saw analysts he had terrorized, managers he had stepped on, and the entire 25th floor data team, Elena's old department, who had gathered by the elevators. They didn't jeer. They didn't gasp. They simply watched. One woman he recognized, Sarah, who used to sit 3 desks down from Elena, just looked at him, took a slow sip of her coffee, and smiled. It was the smile of a person watching a tyrant finally get what they deserve. This is a key moment. Do you think Marcus will have the decency to apologize, or will his arrogance persist even now? Give us your opinion in the comments box. He stumbled onto the street, his father depositing the bail with a cashier's check that represented their entire savings. They handed him a small plastic bag with his wallet, his Patek Philippe, which the DA's office, surprisingly, had not kept, and his phone. He was left with the suit on his back and the $800 he had tried to give Elena. The irony was so bitter, it tasted like acid. "I have to go to the condo," he told his father, his voice raw. "I have to talk to her. I have to get my things. Marcus, the lawyer we found, I don't care. I have to see her." He took a taxi, the first yellow cab he'd been in 5 years, to East 57th Street. He felt like a ghost, haunting his own life. He walked into the gleaming lobby, his heart pounding. Antonio, the doorman, the man Marcus had tipped $500 last Christmas, walked out from behind his marble desk. His face was a mask of professional regret. "Mr. Sterling, I'm afraid I cannot let you upstairs." "Antonio, don't be ridiculous," Marcus snapped, his old arrogance flaring. "This is my home. I live here. Open the elevator." "I'm sorry, sir. My instructions are clear," Antonio said, his voice firm. He was no longer looking at a resident. He was looking at a problem. "You are not a resident here. You are on the permanent trespass list." "Trespass list? In my own building? I'll have you fired for this, Antonio." Antonio sighed, a small, sad sound. "Sir, with respect, you do not seem to understand. You did not just live in Miss Ventura's apartment. You lived in Miss Ventura's building. The Ventura Trust has owned this entire tower since it was built in 1998. She is your landlord." The blood drained from Marcus's face. The entire tower. His office on the 72nd floor. The gym. The lobby. The condo. It had all been hers. He wasn't just a rat in a trap. He had been a rat in her custom-built glass and steel maze. My things," he stammered, his rage collapsing into a pathetic gasp. "My clothes! My files!" All non-personal items were removed by Miss Ventura's staff and placed in a storage unit in Queens, Antonio said, reading from a memo. "A packet was sent to your attorney." "My attorney?" Marcus said, bewildered. "I don't have—" Just then, a man in a cheap suit tapped him on the shoulder. "Marcus Sterling?" "Yes, you've been served." The man handed him a thick envelope and walked away. Marcus tore it open, standing in the lobby that was no longer his. It was the divorce petition. It wasn't a simple filing. It was a 200-page tactical nuclear bomb. Grounds: adultery, conspiracy to commit grand larceny, and severe financial malfeasance. It detailed, with timestamps, every meeting he had with Carla, hotel receipts, dinner bills. It even included a transcript of a call he'd made from his private office line, booking their conference trip to the Caymans. But the asset division was the true execution. Condo, East 57th Street, sole and separate property of Elena Ventura. Mr. Sterling has no claim to any share. Vehicles: Audi R8, Range Rover. Corporate assets: leases terminated, repossessed. Bank accounts: All joint accounts frozen. A forensic audit is underway to recover all funds spent by Mr. Sterling on non-marital activities, including all gifts, travel, and entertainment for his co-conspirator, Miss Carla Perez. She wasn't just divorcing him. She was billing him for the affair. At the bottom, there was a handwritten note from his new public defender. Marcus, call me. Your preliminary hearing is tomorrow. And whatever you do, do not attempt to contact your wife. Also, Carla Perez took a plea deal. She's testifying against you. Says you were the mastermind and threatened her job if she didn't comply. He was alone. Absolute. Completely alone. Carla had saved herself. His contacts weren't returning his calls. His bank accounts were locked. His credit cards, he discovered, were all supplementary cards to Elena's primary account. He ended up in a $49 a night motel in a seedy part of Queens, the kind with a blinking neon vacancy sign that cast a sickly red glow over the stained carpet. He paid cash, using the last of the $800. His $3,000 suit was now his only clothing. He collapsed onto the lumpy bed, the springs groaning in protest. He flicked on the small, buzzing TV, and there she was. Elena Ventura. She was being interviewed on CNN. She was incandescent. She wore a simple, elegant red dress. Her hair was perfect. Her smile was quiet and confident. The anchor was hanging on her every word. Miss Ventura, the interviewer said, it's an incredible story. You have taken the business world by storm. In your first official act as chairwoman, you uncovered a $16 million fraud and restructured your entire executive team. People are calling you the Inquisitor Ventura. What is your secret to such decisive action? Elena smiled, a small, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked directly into the camera, and Marcus felt as though she was looking right at him, sitting in his sordid motel room. It's not a secret, really, she said, her voice as smooth and cold as glass. I just believe in accountability, whether in the boardroom or in your personal life. You cannot build a stable future on a rotten foundation. You have to be willing to find the rot, find the weakness, and cut it out, no matter how personal it is. The anchor nodded, mesmerized. That's a harsh philosophy. It's the only one that works, Elena said. She leaned forward, as if sharing a secret with the world. My father always taught me that some things in life look like they're supporting you, but they're really just weighing you down. You have to be willing to cut the anchor. She paused, and her smile finally reached her eyes, cold and bright as a winter star. And watch the dead weight sink. The phone in Marcus's hand vibrated. It was a text from his new attorney. The DA's office just added a new charge, money laundering. They found another account in the system. They're pulling the bail, Marcus. They're coming for you. Marcus stared at the television, the face of the woman he had discarded, the rocket, the anchor. He had been so wrong. He wasn't the rocket. He was, and always had been, the dead weight. And the bottom of the ocean was coming up to meet him. Should Elena have given Marcus one last chance, or was her act of vengeance a deserved justice? Tell me what you think in the comments. The profound lesson. The final significant message came a week later, a week of pure, unadulterated hell. Marcus's lawyer, a third-rate public defender, had been blunt. You're fried, Mr. Sterling. They have bank records, surveillance photos, and an affidavit from your ex-wife. She's not just the victim here. She's the star witness for the prosecution. They're offering you a deal. 10 years, Marcus had choked out. For a white-collar crime? For stealing nearly $16 million from one of the most powerful women in New York. You're lucky they aren't asking for 20. He was out on bail, but he was a prisoner. His name was toxic. He tried to get a job. Any job. The minute they Googled his name, the interview was over. He was living off the crumbs of his parents' credit card. Carla, he'd heard, fared even worse. She had no family wealth to fall back on. She had turned state's witness, agreeing to testify against Marcus in exchange for a reduced sentence. That was the last text he received from an unknown number. "I'm taking the deal. You're on your own." Rot in hell. He had one last, desperate idea. The storage unit. Elena's message had said his belongings were in a unit in Queens. He still had the key to their old shared storage unit, one they'd had before the condo. Maybe she had used that one. Maybe. Just maybe. There was something in there. Old documents. Cash he had hidden. Anything. He took a bus to Jamaica, Queens. The storage facility was a somber, sprawling complex. He found the unit. 7. He put his key in the lock. It clicked open. He rolled up the metal door, his heart hammering with a sliver of hope. It was almost empty. In the center of the dusty concrete floor sat a single, solitary item. It wasn't a box of cash. It wasn't his expensive suits. It wasn't his golf clubs or his designer furniture. It was the old canvas duffel bag he had thrown at Elena. Taped to the handle was an envelope. His hands trembled as he tore it open. Inside was not a legal document. It was a single sheet of paper, and taped beneath it was the $800 cash Bilal had thrown onto the counter. Below the bills, a single sentence was written in Elena's precise script. "You are a rocket, Marcus. Have a good flight." He collapsed to his knees, the worthless money fluttering to the floor. It was the final, definitive insult. She hadn't just taken his future. She had returned his past. She had given him back exactly what he believed he was worth. He stared at the empty unit, the single bag, and the cash. He finally understood. She hadn't just been investigating him for 6 months. She had been judging him for 5 years. She had given him every opportunity to be a better man, and he had failed every single test. He thought of that night. "I've outgrown you." What a joke. He was never on her level. He was sitting there, a broken man in a cheap suit. When his phone rang, it was his lawyer. "Marcus," the lawyer said, his voice flat. "The DA just called. Miss Ventura's legal team submitted one last piece of evidence. It's bad." "What is it?" Marcus whispered, already knowing it was all over. "A recording. From your condo. It seems the whole penthouse had a security system. One you didn't know about. They have audio of your entire breakup. They have you confessing your relationship with Miss Perez. They have you threatening your wife. And worst of all, they have you kicking her out." The lawyer sighed. "The prosecution is pulling the plea deal. They're going to trial. They're not asking for 10 years anymore, Marcus. They're asking for the maximum, 25. The phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the concrete. He stared into the darkness of the empty storage unit, a tomb he had built himself, and for the first time in his life, Marcus Sterling, the rocket, finally understood the crushing, infinite weight of the anchor. And the rocket was grounded. Forever. The ultimate lesson. True power is not found in the noise you make or the titles you claim, but in the quiet, patient accumulation of truth. The world may reward the arrogant and the loud for a time, but those who underestimate the silent, measured force of the wronged will ultimately be crushed by the gravity of their own deceit. Always remember that the person you dismiss as nothing may hold the keys to everything. What value or lesson do you think Marcus should have learned 5 years earlier that would have saved him? Share your thoughts below.